Hello, all, and welcome to this special episode of Maritime Conversations by Meluha Maritime, where we seek to explore perspectives that are rarely seen and seldom heard in the maritime domain. On behalf of the Meluha family, I, your host, Arjun Prakash Iyer, wish you a happy Republic Day 2026. In today's special episode, I must say that I had the privilege of having a face to face interview with one of the Indian Navy's nine Maha Vir Chakra awardees. The Maha Vir Chakra is the second highest gallantry award of India, which is awarded to soldiers, sailors, and air warriors who have shown conspicuous acts of gallantry when in presence of an enemy. Our guest today has not only the distinction of being one of the Indian Navy's pioneering naval aviators, that is, in the jet age, but also commanding a active frontline naval fighter squadron during the 1971 war, as well as commanding the Indian Navy's flagship, that is, INS Vikrant. Our guest today is Rear Admiral Santosh Kumar Gupta, Maha Vir Chakra, Nausena Medal, retired. So, without much ado, let us get right into today's episode and hear from him regarding his journey in the Navy and what led him to become a distinguished officer and role model for many. I would like to know, where did your journey as a naval aviator begin from, and more so, what motivated you to join the Navy, and what motivated you to volunteer in the Naval Air Arms, sir?
In my days, there were very few jobs going. And I come from a background of my forefathers, my parents, fathers, all zamindars. Nobody had ever been in the armed forces. Forget about armed forces. Never been in any government service. I was the first and the last. So what happened was, in school, I was a roommate of one of the general's sons. And we were good friends, and we're still friends now. Same age, we are same age. And in the first term and the third term in Doon School, we were roommates. His influence was fair amount in the sense that he spoke about the defense, about the army. He was a general's son, and those days there were hardly any generals in the army. This is 1948. But there was in school, we were inspired by a naval officer who came to deliver a lecture to the senior boys in school. This happened every once in a month, and this time a naval officer came in his uniform, and he was the deputy commandant of the Joint Services Wing, or the NDA, which was just created in 1949. That he impressed us greatly, both of us, the army officer's son and me. And we said we'd join the Navy. We were about 15 years old, 14 I think. And that's how it started. But I did have an interest in the armed forces, in the sense that during my days as a young, very little boy, there used to be, the war was on, Second World War, and Dehradun was a cantonment area, and we had the Tommies marching up and down. We had the visits of the Americans' army, and we also had our own Gurkhas marching quick step, and it used to fascinate me. The boots were very fascinating to me. Tuck, 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 that noise. That is the start of it. So finally joined the JSW, Joint Services Wing of the NDA, which was formed in 1949. And this was now in 1953. When I joined the NDA in 1953, in the 10th course of the JSW, I found that my good friend was already there a year before me, because he went there before Senior Cambridge, and I went after Senior Cambridge. Now, this friend of mine was a bit of a letdown, I thought, because he had switched over to the army, and we had both decided we would join the Navy. But be that as it may, when I met him many years later and I spent considerable time with him on holiday in Chandigarh, he said no way he could have joined the Navy. His mother insisted he has to join the army to keep the tradition alive. So that was it. That was why I joined the Navy. Next thing, what happened in aviation? In my fourth term, there was a visit by the Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru, who took our passing out parade. But just before that, there was field, the Lord Mountbatten came to review our parade in 1956, 55. And in that, he came in his naval uniform and he was very impressive. He was a young, smart, good-looking admiral. And he came with our Prime Minister. And he, I think at that time, probably persuaded the Prime Minister to buy an aircraft carrier. And that was the start of it, because soon after that visit, volunteers were asked for flying. Now this was early 1957. By the time I left the NDA and I joined, we were all very seasick at sea as cadets, and we were so sick that everybody put up their hand, volunteers to the flying branch. We were 29 of us. In the 29, 7 got rejected because they were colorblind and they had problems. They could not join. The rest had to take permission from the parents for joining. I think only 6 or 7 of us got permission. And I was probably the first one. My father had been flying in his young days, and I think same time as JRD Tata. And so he was owner of two aeroplanes those days in Lahore. And anyway, so he had no hesitation in signing up for me. And that's how I joined flying. Very soon thereafter, after the cadets' time, we were seasick and we were scrubbing the deck. 6 months later, as midshipman, volunteers called for, and I was one of those 6 midshipmen who was selected from the cadets. Some had not served any time as a midshipman. I had served 6 months as midshipman. And we continued flying. All of us were successful. We obtained our wings in 2 years, and we were the kind of pioneers. But then by that time, recruitment had started, and every course with the Air Force, there was a fairly large element of the naval volunteers. Before us, there were half a dozen or more volunteers from the time. The earliest I can recollect is during the Second World War. The Admiral, there was Command of INS Vikrant, who became a commander and first commander air for Vikrant. He was back in the Indian Navy, the senior most aviator. In between, there were various names like Captain Law and Captain Prasha. I'm saying captains, but they were just junior people those days. And there were many more, 5 or 6 more. They were the true pioneers. But we followed soon afterwards, and the aircraft carrier was acquired in our time. So we were flying for 1 year plus in the UK, doing fighter flying with the Seahawk aircraft which we had purchased. And as soon as the Vikrant was ready, we got on board the aircraft carrier, and we were flying since then. I've had 7 tenures on Vikrant, and at different positions, the junior most pilot to command of the ship. And so therefore that purpose alone, Vikrant was very close to my heart, and so also my wife's. She thought she owned Vikrant because I have been there 7 tenures. That's the story of joining Vikrant. By sheer hit and miss, and there was no knowledge about aviation, except that my father, before even I was born, he had stopped flying in Lahore because Pakistan was created. And so I never even knew at that time that he was an aviator. So that's the start of the whole thing, as far as I'm concerned.
Part of your decorations include Maha Vir Chakra and the Nausena Medal. So we'll get to the Maha Vir Chakra in some time. But sir, could you tell us how exactly were you awarded the Nausena Medal?
Yeah, sure. It's very vivid in my mind. It was 1966, and the aircraft carrier, Vikrant, was in docks and on maintenance when she came out after a few months. The procedure is that flying trials must be carried out before the squadrons embark. And each wire is tested and the catapults are tested before the squadrons embark. I was one or two people who were selected from the squadron to do the flying trials. And this is off Goa now. We were doing flying trials because flying trials is necessary to be near a diversionary airfield. In case something goes wrong with the ship or the aircraft, it could land there in an emergency. So likewise, what happened was that whilst we were doing first test on the arrestor wires, my aircraft hooked on correctly, but soon afterwards began to decelerate, and before I knew anything, I rolled off the deck. And the normal drill would have been to eject, but I didn't do that. I thought I would pick up the speed, and by the time we sank the 30 feet from the deck, 34 feet, my aircraft had picked up flying speed. So I managed to get diverted to Davalim, Goa. The reason was my hook had parted. The wire had parted. Wire had parted on Vikrant and drove around the hook assembly and sheared it off. That's how the deceleration took place. And we have only 180 feet landing surface, 186. So, but it was enough just about making it, and I think it was appreciated that I saved an aeroplane. And those days of foreign exchange being very scarce, and resulted in my gallantry award, the first one, 1966. No Sara Medal, happening in 1966, but awarded in 1968.
So now let's come to the most action-packed part of this episode, if I can call it. Your experiences in the 1971 war. Sir, before we go on to the 1971 war itself, so you assumed command of INS 300 in the year 1970, January of 1970. So at that point of time, I believe there was a shortage of pilots and aircraft in the squadron. So how did you bring about this squadron which had a shortage of aircraft and pilots all the way to fully operationalizing and successfully taking off from the deck of Vikrant on December the 4th? So could you tell us a bit about that journey?
Of course. Whilst the 1971 war was a very unique war in which the Navy took an attacking position in both the fronts, east and the west. But going back to the fact that in my command in 1970, everything was going very well. All the importance was given to my squadron because it was a fighter squadron, the only one embarked frontline squadron. And likewise, there was the Retd squadron. Retd, the aircraft, very new. When we bought them in 1960, ours were already phased out, and Royal Navy was getting rid of the Seahawks, and we took the Seahawks in 1960, 1959, and all the Seahawks that were available in the world, we had bought from everywhere, second hand, third hand, everything. And by the time the Seahawks last one was bought, we had 72 Seahawks. But by 1970, already more than half had been written off. We were very old, and the aircraft had problems because the manufacture had stopped in 1960. And we were now 1970, 71, we were still flying them frontline. The wear and tear on the aircraft carrier is very high. Now, having said that, but 1970 was very, very successful embarked period until Vikrant developed a serious defect with one of our four boilers. Now that necessitated the ship to go back, disembark the squadron en route and go back to the dockyard in Bombay. We were now in the Bay of Bengal at the time. We were in the monsoons. So while the ship headed back, the squadron got disembarked. And when 300 squadron was disembarked in Goa, and the Elysees were then disembarked in Cochin, which was a well-organized station those days. And the aircraft very new. They had no problems, whatever. The Seahawks had serious problems. But this was the opportunity taken by Naval Headquarters, personnel branch, who wanted to ensure that the aviators got their variety of appointments. So many of them were taken away. All the experienced pilots from my squadron were shunted out. And they either took sea billets somewhere, or they took staff appointments for the betterment of the career. In any case, what are they going to do in the squadron when there was aircraft had been decimated to 1 and 2 available, and no spares were available. So aircraft literally for 1 year was grounded, and I had 20 new pilots. There was no way to convert any of them. There wasn't enough aircraft resources available. And as the time progressed into 1971, 1 year after disembarkation, the situation was we could not produce even 2 and 3 aircraft. And there was no foreign exchange available to the Navy, and Navy had their own priorities. Whatever little they had, aviation was the last, priority. So till the Bangladesh issue came up, and East Pakistan was creating havoc in Bengal when the war of clouds began together, and we were. They thought that the best thing would be for Vikrant to sail out of more secure areas in the Bay of Bengal rather than be a sitting target for Pakistan during this 71 uh, war. And so she was quietly sailed out. First, they had 3-4 months of Vikrant had sea trials, and captain, new crew, total crew was new, 1,100 people on board, and the new captain and all the officers were new. But she sailed out quietly and came to the Bay of Bengal of Chennai. That's the time when I was told that I have to bring maximum aircraft and play around with Vikrant whilst based in Meenambakam, Shaw's civil aerodrome. Meenambakam was the Madras.
Chennai, yes, sir.
So that's what happened. I managed to get 3 aircraft, and that also had very deferred effects in non-operation really. And none of us had experience now to fly in clouds in monsoonic weather. But we managed to get 3 aircraft across, and later on, 4th and the 5th, 6th came. By the time the 6th one came, priorities had changed, and naval headquarters were very prompt in getting spares for the aircraft. Slowly, the spares were especially manufactured in USA, in the UK. They began appearing, and my aircraft strength from 1 to 2 came 5 or 6 by the end of August. It took a month and a half, actually more than that. I would say middle of September. A month and a half, we had only 2 or 3 aircraft. And at that time, we were still operating off Meenambakam because naval headquarters had banned the operation of aircraft from the aircraft carrier because of defects in the carrier. And rightly so, all the standard procedures had to be overlooked. And finally, Chief of Naval Staff came on board with his operational crew at CNC East, and they said, "Look, we are going to go to war, and Vikrant will take part in that war. So whatever your problems are, we'll sort them out, list them out properly, and that's what happened. From the period of first week of August to middle of October, end of October, we were still trying to find days for flying, and we embarked. It was not official till CNS personally approved it on the ship and told the naval headquarters to promulgate, because we have landed and the aircraft landed and they're quite safe. So that's how we landed in 2s and 3s and 4s. In the meantime, when I told them that I had owned an aircraft, all experienced pilots, all the experienced pilots that were available in the Navy who were junior to me were all assembled, and we were 15 of us total, and 18 aircraft embarked. Now this was by the first week of November, and we had 25 flying days in all in those 5-6 months, and yet we were all raring to go. We were all experienced pilots, we had enough experience on the deck, and we had enough confidence. At the same time, we thought enough air-to-ground target work at sea, and we were available till the Eastern Fleet was formed in early November. And then we were raring to go because we were all ready. And then, as you know, the war came about on 3rd, 4th of December. By the time we were in hiding from the submarine. Every movement was secret. Vikrant, we ourselves and Vikrant knew where it would be the next day. The commanding officer would get the orders, presumably from CNC undercover, and we would be trying to escape the danger from the submarine for those 3-4 months. Because submarine Ghazi was already in our waters, we appreciated, right, for 3-4 months before the war, and in search of Vikrant. So that secrecy paid off. Finally, when on the 3rd of December we were hiding in Andaman Islands when we got the order that the war is declared. So we sailed out at best speed. Best speed those days were only 12, 14 knots, and totally, I would say, we had broke all rules to operate on the carrier because minimum wind required for a Seahawk aircraft with full load, weapon load, and full fuel load, 25 knots. We just couldn't get that. So we made compromises on fuel or the weapon load carried so that we kept with the envelope. Same with the landing, we required 25 knots wind, but we never got 25 knots. And we were all operating below recommended flying speeds. And that was how we went through the whole war. We did, I think about close to 150 sorties from Seahawks and equally from the Elysees. We could only operate daytime because we have no navigation aids, nor was there any need for us to operate at night because we did a fair amount of damage we caused during the daytime. That was how the whole squadron was very successful, despite the various defects in the craft, not only the speed, when the boiler was not available, but also rough and ready methods to get the boiler in line, taking all risks of explosion. And at the same time, Vikrant had lots of problems with the radar, and they had to be sorted out. We were even stuck in the air. 10 aircraft were stuck in the air and ready to eject or ditch close to the ship because the aircraft carrier had defect with the lift, it was stuck halfway down.
The aft elevator.
Yes, the aft elevator where all the landings take place.
Mm-hmm.
It was well there. So anyway, everything ended very well. Just the last I think drop of fuel, we all landed up one behind the other, and this goes to a great credit of the pilots who were all very experienced. Nobody missed the wires, and nobody had to go around because they would have had not enough fuel to go around. So this is the story of 71 war, and nothing could go wrong. I think the gods were with us. Nothing went wrong. Every day we had 18 aircraft online. Even though 8 or 10 aircraft were hit by bullets, they were repaired overnight, and the morale was extremely high. Not only in the squadron, very high, but even in the ship. And I don't think we could have had a better teamwork than we had during the 71 workup, followed by the war. All the fighter pilots on board in 1971, all on temporary duty. They were all on temporary duty.
Yes, sir.
Apart from me. So his commanding officer and his senior pilot were with me, 71. And that he had commanded one before me. And it was a nice, interesting thing when Captain Vikrant lined everybody up and said, "This is what we expect out of you. And is anybody unhappy serving under G.G. Gupta? Please fall out now." And none of them. So the previous commanding officer, who was my batchmate, was asked, "Are you happy?" "Of course, sir, I know him very well." So I mean, Captain Vikrant wouldn't change the commanding officer. He just made sure that everybody followed. And there's no reason. What I'm saying is that, but they were not senior pilots. Ashok Sinha was given senior pilot by me, whereas there were two senior people, but they all came after him because everybody came on temporary duty. Ashok Sinha was the first one to come, and nobody was senior to him. But these two landed up good 1 month after him. Then we want to change it, and Captain Vikrant realized that we're working as a team now. We don't want any changes here. So it was also the understanding of commander and the captain and the pilots in general. I want to mention one more thing. Mm-hmm. Not enough importance or glory has been given to my technical officer, who rose to become a commodore. He was then a junior lieutenant, and he had just taken over my squadron as air engineer officer in the month of June of that year.
June 71.
Yeah, and his knowledge was so exceptional. His teamwork was so good. He was a very good leader of his men, and they produced 18 out of 18 every day of the year.
The Commodore Gurnam Singh.
Yes. He's co-authored the book with me.
Yes, sir.
I mean, I rather co-authored with him. It was his initiative.
So I believe for your leadership, you were awarded the Maha Vir Chakra.
Just, it gave us a bit of surprise on my birthday. We were happened to be walking on the flight deck at night after dinner when the Sworn Commander RAdm Squadron and I were batchmates. And we heard on the radio my name being announced. I so happened it was my birthday on 21st December, and the war has finished on the 16th. But it was, they read that I led 11 successful strikes, and that for my leadership qualities, they awarded me the Maha Vir Chakra. But we also had other 4 Vir Chakras in the squadron. And we also had 4 mentioned dispatches. We also had 2 Nausena medals, technical officers, who did tremendous work in getting the ships, getting the aircraft operational every day.
Absolutely. So anytime we hear about the story of the Vikrant and the kind of challenges that the pilots and technical officers of the squadron had, and bring up a squadron that was virtually non-operational into a state where it could go and fight a war, it successfully come out without any losses.
Only 25 flying days.
Yeah, and within 25 flying days,
we didn't have the aircraft till we didn't have the 18th aircraft till about end of October, early November.
Yes, so I guess it's always a hair-raising story to hear. How many times we go through it over and again. So now coming to your experiences about being one of the only 3 or 4 pilots in the entire Navy to be deck qualified, both on the Seahawk and the Alizé aircraft. So how did that happen, and what are your impressions about the Alizé aircraft?
Well, I tell you, I was day and night qualified the Alizés and Seahawks, and also on the Chetak CR helicopter, day and night. But that was a privilege that was given to me as a Commander of Vikrant, and that's how the Chetak aircraft, helicopter, I've flown and qualified. But really speaking, it's nothing great. All I can say is that it was very easy. It was 3 of us, if I recall. It was Commander Vikrant, Commander Prasha, after I was qualified. But there was Shoni Mehra, my batchmate, and I were the 2 guys who qualified day and night. I'm not sure Shoni Mehra was converted night in Seahawks.
I believe even Admiral Tahiliani was also this thing.
Tahiliani, as a test pilot, had flown the Alizés. I can't remember him a conversion, but he might have converted. As Prasha did, 4 or 5 deck landings were required to qualify, and 4 catapult launches was getting over.
And how about the Alizés? What are your impressions of the Alizé?
I found that conversion to Alizé was so easy because it was a new aircraft. It was beautifully lighted at night. You could control the systems. You could control the angle of attack because you had a bip in which you kept it on the green and your angle of attack was perfect. All you had to do was line up and you had to follow the mirror, keeping the glide path. So whereas Seahawks, all the 3 things are missing. So you have to do 3 things. Here you have to do 2 things. One is speed right. Speed right with the attitude came automatically and the power came automatically. All you had to do was lining up and you had to follow the mirror. But Seahawks, none of things. And much faster. Your total approach, the final run was for 20 seconds. You do all this in 20 seconds. So Seahawk was a much bigger challenge, but a great pleasure to fly. It was a very forgiving aircraft. And Alizés were, of course, Rolls Royce. It was that beautiful. But you had to cope with other things. You had 2 other crew who kept on chatting, which you not used to in the fighter aircraft. That was one thing.
Especially when you're flying alone in a Seahawk, you don't have a co-pilot or a navigator with you.
No. So the other thing I want to tell you is that I took part in 1965 war. I was then back at Seahawk with the Alizés, and I did all my night flying with Alizés operational at low level at 400 feet, 300 feet at night. And this was during the 65 in September when we operated off Santa Cruz, Bombay. That time was with the Alizé Squadron.
Okay.
It was a very good experience. By the time I got used to having chatter in the cockpit, and it was welcome actually. At the Howards, we just spent 3.5 hours.
of maritime reconnaissance, as you put it. So, your best appointment, I believe, would be as the captain of INS Vikrant. So, as you rightly mentioned towards the beginning episode, that it was your eighth tenure, seventh tenure on the Vikrant, and you ended up commanding the ship. So, what are your some of the experiences that you can recollect from that time? And I believe it was also the time when then Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi came aboard the ship as well. So, could you tell about that, sir?
Yes, it is. Rajiv Gandhi came, the Prime Minister came on board during the silver anniversary, 25th year of commissioning of Vikrant. And he spent night there. The idea was to show him night flying on Sea Harrier. That was the commanding officer. CNS was an aviator, test pilot. He also was on board. He brought the Prime Minister in with all his retinue. We showed her, and I think we were justified in doing that because we got 12 more Sea Harriers as a result of the Prime Minister's visit. But that is the Vikrant's silver anniversary. What is the most challenging time? I was very fortunate. Apart from Vikrant's ship handling, it was a challenge. Why? Because I didn't take pilot on board, except in Bombay, where it was compulsory to take pilot. So I did ship handling myself, and navigator helped me. Everywhere I went, I saved money for the Navy. Instead, the Navy paid me extra, taking a risk to be shared by navigating officer. So ship handling came naturally to me. I had been fortunate that even though I had never even run a boat at sea more than once in a career's time, and the training officer said everyone must handle the boat. So the motorboat we handled. That is my only experience. I went off for flying. I came back. I missed all the courses. I had to do my midshipman's board as a 4 years, 3 years as lieutenant. I did my watch keeping as 4 years left. All this should have been done before I became a sub-lieutenant. But the Navy helped me, whether by they certainly did. They sent me in command of missile boats in 1 year after the war. As you know, missile boats did a very great job off Karachi. I was commanding 4 missile boats, one my own and 3 others.
As a part of a squadron, is it?
This part of the squadron. And then after that, I was given a squadron of minesweepers, 7 ships under my command. I commanded 1 and the 6 were with me. And so slowly, next thing was a tanker, 15,000 ton tanker. I think it's 15,000 or maybe corrected 12,000 or something. INS Shakti. And that also gave me experience. It had only 1 screw, and therefore ship handling was a challenge, but I learned very fast. And then Vikrant all came very naturally to me. I had seen ships being handled by commanding officers, but then my job was always outside, never in the bridge, except as Commander A, the second in command, and therefore Admiral Talyani, Captain Talyani then was a commanding officer, and I was second in command, and it was compulsory for me to be on the bridge, even though I was a Commander A, because Commander was junior to me. So in the event of requirement, I would take over. I followed him. I saw what he did, and I just copied him all the way. And I came back a much richer man with lots of money through pilotage earned, having taken the risk on Vikrant, and before that Shakti, and before that the minesweepers, before that the missile boats. So it was just fortunate, was placed such a way that came all very naturally. Vikrant in my time had a fire, almost 2-3 fires every day, and quite often it'd be an emergency. But then that was because the ship was so old. This was 1981. It was 1980s, 4 to 86. She was in the last legs, and nothing was going right, of course. So that was part. And but I had a very lovely crew and very professional crew. The engineers were very good. Electrical people were very good. Commander was very good.
That's, I believe, that must be a very prestigious appointment to be commanding the flagship of the Navy at that point of time. So I believe not many are fortunate to get that kind of an appointment, and you have spent a vast amount of your naval career in the Vikrant,
Vikrant, yes.
in and around Vikrant,
Yes,
if I
yes.
should put it that way. Aviator who has been right from the commissioning of the Vikrant all the way to its final legs, and
Almost.
done, yeah, almost, and everything in between as well. All the important appointments in the carrier as well. So it was very very insightful to sort of understand from you how things work in an aircraft carrier, and your contribution towards etching the Vikrant's name in the annals of Indian Navy's history, as well as the global history of naval warfare, if I can put it that
Arjun,
way.
I can only say this, that I'd been trained such a way that I'd followed those steps, and although there were always challenges, but it was, I think I'd been trained adequately for it.
Well, so anyways, thank you very much for your time talking to us. It was wonderful hearing these stories from you, and certainly is proud to know that we have these kind of people who are guarding the seas out there. While we are living in this republic country, it's certainly wonderful to be having you over here on the occasion of Republic Day. So thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
And that, folks, is a wrap for today's special episode of Maritime Conversations. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and comment to Meluha Maritime on your favorite streaming platform. Currently, we are available on YouTube and Spotify. Our social media handles are also active on Instagram, X, that is formerly Twitter, and LinkedIn. Also, we publish regular articles on our website on Meluha Maritime titled Maritime Musings. So, if you're an avid enthusiast in reading about the maritime